Welcome to tonight's study session, June 5th, 2023, City Council reports. Yamila?
My brain is not put together at the moment. I did get to attend last week already. The Congress for New Urbanism award ceremony for the in downtown Westminster was one of the winners, as was reported last week, so that was cool. And I will be out of town for our next meeting, so I will miss the meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
And what I could see, like, it's a ton of stuff that we're doing, all the good stuff I will be missing over this next week and weekend, so I'm very sad about that. So.
Pro Tem?
I had a handful of things I wanted to bring up. First was kudos to Councilor Zadi for pushing out robocalls on our events, but I've got questions about it. And I was wondering, with our official council outreach events, if that would be something that the city would look at pushing out wider, so everybody who potentially is on the city list gets at least those ones. Then that way, there's more reach, and I feel like that just doubles down on your efforts. So I wanted to bring that up as a ask of council. I wanted to give a heads up that tomorrow I'm doing an interview with Brian Moss of CBS 4 about our ordinances that we recently passed. I got him in touch with communications who gave the specifics on it, much like they did with the article that was done for the Denver Post. Then as far as council things that I did in the last week, had Rocky Mountain Airport Roundtable on Friday, and so staff had provided there was certainly confusion amongst the group as far as what the consultant wanted back. Because the consultant, my understanding was they were going to take our feedback and try to come up with different routes and tactics to mitigate noise. And so the way that we approached it was, here are things we absolutely don't want you to fly over, because I thought, and I wasn't alone, that's what some of us thought they wanted back. Evidently, it was more, and the consultant validated this, but what some of our neighboring jurisdictions did was, here's all the things we don't want you to fly over. So if you look at the original noise mitigation map that they operated under, that they took down off the site, essentially all of Westminster is blacked out. And so I did kind of push back and said, you know, what you're probably going to get back from Westminster is a blacked out Westminster, and then you can tell us what you can and can't do. So I in my mind, I thought we were trying to avoid a pissing match like that, and that's the way I phrased it to them, because I feel like that is the path that we're going to go down. Because essentially they blacked it out, and they actually kind of were upset that we had said Stanley Lake. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if staff blacked out Stanley Lake because it's drinking water, or if it's because I guess that hasn't really been flown over in general for a long time, and I don't know if that's because of the Eagle Preserve or because of it being our drinking water. And so even though they had already pretty much blacked out their city, our partner said, well, we didn't do that. We'll add that to our list. And I'm like, so basically we're gonna, you know, I don't understand, you know, how that's gonna be progress. But the ask is to come back with a map that basically blacks out or puts a shade over everything we don't want flown over that we feel like people might complain about. So to me, and I would kick that back at staff, but I feel like that original noise mitigation area, which pretty much reds out most of Westminster, is probably essentially what we'd come back with. I wanted to pass this around. This was done by Superior, and it's interesting. They're basically like heat maps of flights over the years. And it's funny because they keep saying, well, we're definitely the most impacted. I'm like, yeah, but this is my neighborhood, and it's solid. So you can't tell me how many are even being flown over that because it's solid. Yeah, it crosses there, but how are you more impacted than Westminster? It's very hard off these maps to see, but I wanted to bring them back and at least let you guys look at them. So happy to hear if I'm off at all on kind of my stance that I've taken, either from council or staff. But to me, we go through a lot of these meetings and we're not getting a lot of things done. So now we are supposed to turn that back into them within the next 3 weeks of, what we want them to consider not flying over. The only other thing I would bring up is there was a recommendation that potentially we change the format to have like one meeting where we just do public comment, a quarter potentially. They didn't really necessarily make any ground, but the guys was under, yeah, we want to hear the public's comment, but we also are spending money on this consultant to try to get some progress done. I think Commissioner Kraft-Tharp was the one who made the recommendation, and it, wasn't weighed on one way or another, so I don't know if that's something we'll talk about in the future.
I feel like they are tweaking or playing or trying different things because we're in the flight path, and I just have noticed there's different, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, you get used to a certain thing and things have been different. So I was wondering if they are trying some different things.
Where did they pull this map information
They
from?
said that they got, and I brought up the point, I said, we don't have aviation experts on our staff. So, we're kind of finger in the wind with some of this. And Superior said, well, neither do we. They hired a consultant to do it. I don't know what consultant they used, but the representative from Superior said they had somebody outside do that, data mining.
Would they share it? Or did they just pass that around?
They gave everybody a copy of it. I'd have to ask. I can't imagine they wouldn't. I mean, everybody's pretty sharing with the information, but my concern with other municipality or counties' information is it's trying to tell their story. And I was hoping that, we would be trying to work together to tell a unified story that helps everybody. And this has been brought up multiple times. If we don't want to move something and then it affects somebody else. And so like if each municipality is only looking at what affects them, then, if they make a change, who does the impact, or who does the change impact? So they did at the meeting, they started off by reminding the public that we're not there to talk about lead. That certainly is at the forefront still. And I think that there are people, and we've seen some emails where people are saying, I didn't even know that was a thing. And, so I feel like some of that conversation is making an impact on whether or not people are concerned about that. Not that, we're not trying to focus on it, but it seems like the more that group talks about it, the more that's, being questioned by the public.
Comments, questions?
What was the dot map? I don't see a legend on this.
I think that's a complaint. That's where
Okay,
complaints came
because it's
from.
different than this, okay.
That the more heat map that's really heavy, those are actual flights that they mapped,
Yeah,
and the dots were complaints.
okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Counselor Baker? Counselor Evans?
Yep, I had Historic Landmark Board meeting on May 31st, and they received a presentation from Lindsay Flewelling from the Historic Preservation Office, and where our board learned about certified local government status and what that means. And Westminster is certified local government. We are one of 68 in Colorado to have that status, which means that we can have the Historic Landmark Board that certifies us to have one, as well as the Historic Society. And I forgot my notes at home, but all of the presentation is on the website, on the Historic Landmark Board page. And essentially, a lot of good conversation out of it. Actually, the rodeo market had come up as part of the discussion because there is a lot of grants from this, at least the state level. So just wanted to ensure that Staff is plugged in with Lindsay and Company. I'm sure that Kate has already brought staff up to speed. She's really good about that. So just wanted to ensure that we're not missing any opportunities with these grants, and as we move forward with the rodeo market preservation and getting it activated. So that was mainly the crux of the presentation, was what it means to be a CLG, or excuse me, let me see the certified local government, yeah, CLG, and then why things are preserved, and what it means at the federal, state, and local level, and the tax credits and grants available for nonprofits, governments, and private owners. So really great information. All of that is on the website.
Counselor Seymour?
Thank you. Last Tuesday, I attended the Westminster Chambers ribbon cutting at Legacy Point that is reopened. So that was a great opportunity to see that whole facility. And then on Wednesday, along with many others, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors out of West Pines. Yeah, West Pines Behavioral Hospital groundbreaking, and Manager Freitag was there, as well as Deputy City Manager Opie. So we had a good showing there. Looks like an outstanding facility.
Thought we might be staying there till it was built.
No kidding. We got to, they rented a really good tent that day because we got hammered, and everybody lived, obviously. Or at least the ones here that got out. Then Wednesday morning, I participated in the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee call. That was a wrap-up of the legislative session. The block party on Friday was great weather and really good turnout. I thought the families really enjoyed that. Today was the quarterly Rocky Flats Stewardship Council. It was in person. We've been on Zoom for the last 3 quarters, I believe, at least. And then back and forth. The technology there is a little bit challenging. It's up at the Rocky Mountain Airport conference room. There were some concerns brought up by public comments, asking to move that meeting to the evenings to have more accessibility, asking to have it hybrid so more people don't have to travel for that. So that the executive committee is kind of going back and forth on that. And so more to come on that as far as transparency and accessibility. And they're redoing the website. There had been some glitches in that, so it's going through a 6-week overhaul so people will be able to access data faster on that. And this was the annual update for last year's full report, which if you really can't go to sleep, I think if you printed it, it'd be about like that. And so these are all the testing sites around the entire site and their history and their background. And all that information. There was only 2 reportable incidents in this last year. Local governments, including ours, if there's a reportable incident where they find something that's over the what's called the RIFLM, what was the agreed upon cleanup amount on any one of the items that are out there: plutonium, uranium, arsenic. Bless you.
Thank you.
Americium, and some other nitrates. Then we get notified on that, and then they start testing every month. And both of those reportable incidences that it crept above, barely above, but they have to report it. Then the next month and every month after that, it was below that. So we get updates on what's the surface water like, what's the groundwater like, what's the site operations, and then from a horticulturist and then the elk herd specialist. The elk herd is gigantic out there, and so every picture they show, oh, and then here's the elk watching us, and it's just standing there looking. So the site is stable, and it's some of the most tested ground in the Rocky Mountain region on a monthly basis. So there was on that report for the public's edification changed on the report. Normally, just members of the board could ask questions. This quarter, they said, well, we're going to try this from now on. Board asks questions, and then once they're done with it, then members of the public can ask questions on that. And then if the board wants to magnify any of those public questions, then they can come back with that. That part started to go a little long, and I had another meeting, but Trey Nance was gonna update me on if anything happened at the end there. There was only 4 members of the public there today. So that was the Stewardship Council, and on Wednesday, I'm going to participate in an on-site tour. I have not been on-site, so they're gonna do Department of Energy and EPA and CDPHE are gonna sponsor a tour. So I'll let you know how the elk look. So that was it. Just now have all the abbreviations down for the most part out there, so I know where my WAMPOC is and my WASPOC and all the testing sites, so we're good to go.
And you get to count coup, right?
Start with the coup.
Mr. Zadi?
Just wanted to give a special shout out for the summer block party. It was very well done, very well attended. So thank you to everyone involved with that. I think a lot of people loved it. It was full, so many people, food, music. I thought it was great. And the Environmental Advisory Board, they are one of the most organized boards that I've seen. They basically they talked, the majority of the meeting was about how they were going to set up their stand at the block party. They had these QR codes with different issues that they want to make this community more aware of. So I thought that was good. And Paul announced his retirement, so he's retiring, which is very sad. But there will be a replacement from the staff. That's about it.
West Pines has already been talked about, block party. It was just superb. We had constant people. We got rid of all of our handouts, but there were good conversations there. I applaud Mayor Pro Tem, the gentleman that was at our town hall around homelessness, came and had a very heated, long discussion, but that man listens. He just kept it calm. And we heard, because I was in between conversations, so I only heard part of it as other people were coming up to discuss things. But that's what we're out there for. And he felt comfortable enough to come and continue to share his, in parts, rage. And I can't say if I didn't own his business, I may feel the same way. So. But they were able to have a good conversation. So I applaud you. I know Rich at one end was having conversations, Obi was having conversations, I was having conversations. And they were everywhere, from the plants and the planters, the trees not looking good. I guess a bunch of trees just got cut at 104th at the King Soopers thing. So a few of those people questioning. So. As much as I think we've put out about the ash borer, people still don't know. So anyway, but it was a fabulous, it was fun to be out where the music was, and the people all enjoyed the food. You saw the kids. People were able to vote on the sculptures, and boy, that was a hard thing to do. That was as bad as the wraps. And then in the Grange, they gave input about England Park. So lots, people just were happy. Of course, we had the Rotary for Chief Hall roast, and that was fantastic. NADA, just to remind you, they are having a meeting to codify all this, but there will be free bus for kids from September to August, because they have to do a year. And most of you know schools here start sometime in August, but don't worry, because this year they're doing July and August free fare for better air. So July, August are free to everybody, and September through August, kids can get to their schools. So we had the Jeffco quarterly meeting, talking mostly about homelessness and working together, and then the Public Works Week and barbecue. I love it. They're being honored, and they cook a fabulous lunch. So I had a funeral that morning, and Mayor Pro Tem and I came after that, and it tasted better than Wendy's, or not Wendy's, charcoal grills. What are they?
Burger King.
Burger King. It smelled like Burger King because it smelled so good, but the burgers were great. So thanks to everybody that has been working hard and involving community. It's been great. You, sir?
So next slide. First of all, attended the North Glen City Hall groundbreaking just prior to this. Passed around a flyer to share with the rest of the council. Pretty interesting project. It's going to be a net zero building. They'll have solar panels on the top, entirely electric, actually smaller than their current city hall. They're paying cash for it, and so very, very nice project and ceremony, and so it's good to go do that. Real quick about Emerald Ash Borer. I did share our link with the executive director at the Westminster Chamber and asked her if she would share that with chamber members so that we get that word out to businesses. I was on site with some folks from the city staff over by the promenade, and we were walking around the parking lot there and realized that all those trees are ash trees, and most of them are well beyond any kind of saving. They're dying, and so it's just a reality for our community, and I'm not so sure everybody necessarily appreciates how devastating that's going to be, but it will be significant, and so.
Mr. Gibbs will miss having a tree to.
Yeah, but yeah, they're it's hitting, and it's hitting hard. So anyway, some updates. First of all, this Wednesday night from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at Sheridan Green Elementary School, the city is hosting an ice cream social, but that's kind of the front and the reason to get people to come participate in a tour and essentially a visioning option for them to share their thoughts on how we can reuse Sheridan Green Elementary School. And so we'll be doing that with Jeffco Public Schools and then their representative CRL associates to put that on. And so we'll certainly share with folks what the transfer, what that's going to look like to the best of our ability, understanding what we know currently. But the key point, and I share this not only with members of the council, but certainly with the community that may be in attendance or listening, we're really interested in getting your ideas and feedback. And then once we have that, we'll be able to start to flesh out what some possible reuses might be, and then come back, call it beginning of the school year, and share some costs, some design options, what things might look like or could look like, and then kind of go from there. But this is the first step.
Did we get something out in the last day or that last week in everybody's folders?
When you say everybody's folders.
Kids that talked about what we're having for.
I have no idea.
Yes, Lindsay Kimball, Economic Development Director. Yes, they were able to send those home with the kids in the last week of school.
Good, thank you.
And I know it's coming up, but there's nothing on what we
We've
asked.
asked that that's the school district that has control of that. That's the marquee sign out in
Yeah.
front of the school. So,
Yep.
yeah, still no answer on that one. But if anybody does want to learn more about that school reuse discussion project, if you will, we do have a landing page on our city website. So it's our city website / Sheridan Green. I encourage folks to check it out. And also kind of in that same venue, the school district, so Jeffco Public Schools and their consultant CRL associates, they also held a community meeting to share the district's disposition process for Zerger Elementary School. That's one that, frankly, it doesn't revert to the city's control. So that one will go to whoever provides the most appropriate reuse proposal to the school district for that. And so we'll have that project moving forward. Of note, it's the third bullet up there, but that's, they are asking for representatives from both Westminster and Arvada to serve on an ad hoc advisory committee. And so more details on that, but Mayor, that will be coming to you and the council here in the near term. And then they'll open it up for additional seats with members of the public. So good process there. Next slide. Some Westie wins. So the Westie Core Youth making a difference. If you look at that program, they recruit local young adults through the Mile High Youth Corps to provide care and maintenance of vegetation across the community. And so our folks, 9 young men and women, began a 6-week-long operation removing Russian olives from the city drainage sites over near Stanley Lake. And they work on integrated pest management and other issues to improve sustainability and appearances of our parks and open space. So nice to see them getting involved in our city's vegetation and open spaces. Also, the city forestry team partnered with Tree Force to make a difference. So this was some training at Tepper Fields for the Park People's Tree Forest Workforce Development Pre-Apprenticeship Program. There's a picture off there to the right. This 2022 Tree Force prepares adults from diverse backgrounds for meaningful careers in forestry through the classroom, work-based, and hands-on learning. So if you want to learn more about Tree Force, you can certainly do that, and the website is listed there. Next slide. Some things to know, as I mentioned, Sheridan Green Community Meeting and Ice Cream Social, 5 to 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday evening at Sheridan Green Elementary School. Special Permits and License Board meeting, that's Wednesday, 7 to 8:30 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. Then in combination with Highland Hills Recreation Parks and Rec District, there'll be a Carol Butts Park Ice Cream Social and Community Input Meeting. That's Thursday night, 5 to 7 p.m., Carol Butts Park. Neighborhood Nights continues June 9th, Friday, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. That's at College Hill Library. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. is the Sheridan Underpass grand opening. So that's an exciting opportunity for our community to kind of put that one in the history books.
What time is the actual ribbon cutting?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, Mayor. I've got 9 to 11 blocked on my calendar, but I don't know the details. I'll find out.
I have a haircut from 8 to 9, so I'm just
Oh,
wondering
okay.
if I need to change it.
Okay, we'll follow up with you. And then next meeting for the council is on June 12th, 6:30 right here, council chambers. Next slide. Some information-only items. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have, but the replacement municipal court project delivery method, some housing highlights, taking a look at Meadowbrook mixed housing development, and the upcoming housing needs assessment, and then our 2023 CDBG grant annual planning process. Next slide. As always, encourage folks to reach out and talk to us, ask questions, give us your ideas, provide feedback. I'm happy to take complaints too, that's okay. Phone number, you can call my office at 658-2006. You can email me directly. My email is on the board there on the screen. mfreitag@cityofwestminster.us. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. Ring our bell at Nextdoor. As always, we want to be accessible, responsive, transparent, and accountable. Pending any questions, that's all I have this evening.
Councilor Namella?
Yes, Counselor.
Not necessarily a question, just a re-emphasis of just looking at what North Glen has accomplished with their net zero all-electric building and looking at the solar panels that are on top of it. It just seems like they're definitely moving into the next generation of building design and sustainability, and I know that also serves for long-term maintenance. And so when I think about whether it's the Westminster, water treatment plant, where again it's great that we're building it, but there's also the maintenance, and I would just love us to be able to. I know we're going to be doing it with Envision rating, but having a higher goal to reduce our costs, our overhead on that building. Just wanted to emphasize that.
Sure.
And also for the Sheridan Green reuse, if there is any way to, again, just minimize the O&M on whatever we do there. There's a lot of land, and maybe there's some opportunity for some solar or something. So.
Understood. Thank you, Counselor. Got it.
Only thing is is that hail?
No, it's not.
After during the time we were under the tent for so long, at the West Pines, the one thing we learned was, they're starting that and it's going to be built by next August. And the reason why is the builder knows the supply chain, has things being stored. They know they can build what they're gonna build and no hesitation. So as we look at some of our major projects, I would hope we dig into whoever's doing the building into what access they have to supply chains, because the reverse of that is my daughter in Nantucket trying to build a home was promised something in 2021, hands down, and it is 2023, and they may not have it till 24. So I just think we need to be diligent about that, because it's obvious good contractors know their supply chain, have their supply chain, and can depend on their supply chain. So I just throw that out there because that was amazing to me that they were getting this building done so quickly.
Yep, understood, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, we're ready.
All right, so, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilors, tonight, our first presentation is a presentation on State Proposition 123. And we've got folks from the Department of Local Affairs, Division of Housing, that will talk us through that. Counselor?
Can we ask any questions about the information items?
Certainly, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. On the first one,
Back up a slide. Yep.
I would assume that Sheridan Green is also going to be a potential replacement for a
Courthouse, I don't think we're gonna replace, intending, or we've never talked about replacing the old, an old school to replace our old municipal court, so
Well, it has just come available
I'm not sure why we would do that.
for cost reasons. Couldn't we save a ton of money?
The council's already committed to building. We've started that track, and so I don't understand why we would go back and look at Sheridan Green. I mean, it's the same, same discussion that we had about, putting the MSC there too. That didn't make much sense either.
Okay. And on the community development block grant, last year we got in it too late to have any meaningful input into it. So where do we stand now, and what kind of meaningful input can we have on it?
Bring forward Economic Development Director Kimball. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Great question. So this is actually a precursor to the process even starting. We wanted to have this information-only memo for this board, and so the public could also see that in the public record and hear about it tonight. We're starting months ahead of where we were last time we do this. This is an annual process to update our CDBG plan. So there'll be multiple opportunities, including online opportunities for folks to provide input if they're not able to attend one of the community meetings. In addition, there'll be public hearing back with this board as well. So we look forward to all of the input from the community, and in fact, we have the first meeting set up for June 20th at the Eaton Street Apartments in the Community Center.
Okay. And is it a blank slate? Are there any tentative arrangements, or is it a blank slate?
Sure, so every year, HUD actually expects for staff to make initial recommendations, to give some suggestions based on past input from our partners and needs that we've determined throughout the years. The annual action plan does have to roll up to the consolidated plan, which is a 5-year plan, which also has to roll up into the HUD's national objectives. So we start from HUD, we have to be consistent with their national objectives. That informed the 5-year plan. We're in the 4th year of the 5-year plan. So we are working on putting together an annual plan that's consistent with that consolidated plan. So There are some guardrails on what we can put into the plan. It needs to be consistent with what's been stated in the past and what's been approved in the past. But otherwise, we are open and ready for any ideas from the community.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I just, okay. So in '24, we'd be looking at updating the 5-year
Yes.
plan.
Thanks. So, if we could go to the next slide for our presentations. So I'm going to pitch it over to Stephanie Troller, and then introduce our guests from DOLA. I saw you at CCCMA was in your presentation, so I'm hoping to learn more tonight.
You're still awake, it's good news.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Temp, Council, City Manager Freitag, Stephanie Troller, Economic Resilience Manager. We have 3 recommended actions for you this evening. One is to receive a presentation about Proposition 123 from Deputy Division Manager Mo Miskell. There's been a lot of legislation around affordable housing and land use this year, so we're hoping to provide a little clarity about Proposition 123. And then we're going to review our baseline data, and I'll ask you for direction on whether or not staff should commit under Proposition 123. We do ask that you hold questions until the end. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mo and his team. I'll start. We have Ben, who is a statistical analysis, and Robin DeFalco, who is also helps with affordable housing programs, here to offer assistance and questions. And then, of course, Deputy Division Manager Mo Miskell will take it from here. Make sure his PowerPoint is loaded.
There we go. Sweet.
All right.
All yours, Mo.
Well, good evening. Thanks for hosting us. Really appreciate the warm welcome and the interaction we've had with Stephanie and Molly. Amazing team, by the way. You guys are in excellent hands. I read what they wrote up, or actually you wrote it. Wonderful job. Apparently they are very familiar with Proposition 123. Have you guys had the privilege of reading Proposition 123? All 22 pages. It is not the easiest, and for who are the lawyers in the room? Not easy, right? But we're here to make some sense of it for you, and of course work with you to hopefully get your commitment on file here in the near future. And as Molly mentioned, or Stephanie will reserve the questions for the end. Now, we're talking about quite a bit of money, and it's supposed to be steady money. We received hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few years from federal stimulus money, et cetera. But this is going to be state funds, and the first year, we're not looking at a full year of funds. So we're collecting funds from January 1st of this fiscal year, which is this latter half of the fiscal year, through June 30th. But we're going to be operating for the whole year, so just keep in mind, when you see these funds, it's half the funds that are anticipated for a full year. And we're getting 40% of it, so as you can see, there's actually 2 funds. The one highlighted in blue is what the Division of Housing would be operating under, and that is going to be 40% of the total funds for every fiscal year. Now, the Office of Economic Development International Trade, another state agency, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, they're going to be managing the remaining 60%, and they are working with CHAFA in order to administer their 3 programs. So we'll have 3 programs, and I'll have the next slide will detail those programs, and then OED at CHAFA will have their 3 programs, which I'm not going to get into. We'll be more than happy to share information about their 3 programs. We work very closely with them on implementing this amazing opportunity, which is Proposition 123. Now, this used to be numbered 1, 2, 3, but when you convert Google Slides to PowerPoint, everything is apparently number 1. Which is awesome. They should all be equal. But as you can see on the right slide of the slide, they all have different percentages. So the big program that we're going to be implementing at Division of Housing is the Affordable Home Ownership Program. If you guys are interested in the rental side of things, that's going to be the OED at CHAFA side. We have the privilege of implementing the Home Ownership Program. And as you can see, the funds underneath it. And then, of course, we've got the second biggest program at 45% is our homelessness program. I used to say when I started presenting this information that a local jurisdiction, and then now a tribal government, which is awesome, so local government or tribal government, would have to commit in order for any of this money, including the 3 programs at OED at CHAFA, to have those funds unlocked, right? That is not the case anymore. We've received a recent legal interpretation that the homelessness program is not tied into a local government commitment, which is great news, as long as it's not resulting in the development of housing units, affordable housing units, okay? So that's important to know, but everything else requires local government commitment. And of course, the last program, which our sister agency, Division of Local Government, Robin is here to represent, will be helping us administer, also requires local government commitment. So I know it's confusing that you have to commit in order to receive the funds to get you to get you the help to make sure that your commitment comes through. But that's how it's set up in the law. All right, so we are working on some tight deadlines from a commitment perspective. November 1st of this year is the deadline for the commitment. It's a 3-year commitment. And then after that, it's every 3 years by November 1st of that third year. So we're looking at 2023, 26, etc. So first and foremost, keep that in mind. I know your crack staff knows it and is working fast and furiously to prepare you guys for potentially doing that, which is fantastic. And you probably saw in the write-up that they did that you have to first develop a baseline of affordable housing, right? Determine what is your affordable housing stock today. And the law is incredibly prescriptive on how to go about doing that. So please know, we didn't write the law. We're implementing it and trying to understand it as thoroughly as possible and working with our legal counsel on the implications of how we interpret it. But as you can see from this slide, there are 2 base sources for estimates. The ACS and the CHAS data set. I know you guys have helped beta test our baseline assistance tool, which I'll get to in a second here, which is fantastic. And it sounds like you have a baseline estimate for your consideration this evening, which is awesome. We're looking forward to hearing more discussion on that. Now, the way the law is laid out, if you are not comfortable, for whatever reason, with your applying your own AMI and establishing your baseline affordable housing, you may petition the Division of Housing for an alternative AMI. And as you can see from this slide, one is your neighboring county. I didn't realize until recently that Westminster was in more than one county, so congratulations. That opens up your options tremendously, which is fantastic. And you can also utilize the state median income if that suits your needs better. So all of that is in our spreadsheet that we tabulated for all local jurisdictions to consider. Please keep in mind that we are not the ones making that determination for you or any of the other jurisdictions. The law is very clear that you have to make that determination. And a question was asked of me earlier, who that be? That is up to you to determine. We will not tell you who is the spokesperson for your local government. You're gonna have to make that decision. We do ask it be one person, and we ask that that person be authorized by the appropriate folks making that decision to represent Westminster in submitting that baseline estimate, and of course submitting ultimately the commitment to increase that baseline by 3% each year for a total of 3 years, 9%, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. The law does say 3% each year. We have gotten clarification that it's okay to say 9% over 3 years is okay. So if you cannot get 3% in year 1, that's fine. You just need to make sure you get 9% by the end of the year 3, if that makes sense. This is what I mentioned earlier, is the commitment filing process. Ultimately what we're trying to achieve, trying to get local governments to commit to unlock the vast majority of the money that we just talked about. And we have a nifty QR code for you to access it, or you can access it with the website at the bottom right. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that. Anyone? Please take your time in looking at it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. It's pretty basic, it's not complicated, but of course, if there's anything you want to work through with us, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You know how to reach me, you know how to reach Connor, you know how to reach Ben now. So please do that. And then, as we mentioned earlier, or we talked about, got to do the baseline first, which you guys got to jump on. You were one of 20 or so jurisdictions that beta tested. Was it 20 or 30?
It was 20.
20? Yeah. So thank you for helping us beta test it. We worked out some of the kinks based on your feedback, and we are now live with it. We went live with this tool as well as the commitment on May 10th. One jurisdiction has successfully applied so far. Can anybody guess? You only have 330 choices. It was Salida, dark horse, out of the Western Slope. We're very excited about that. They didn't ask any questions. I don't think we had one presentation with them, zero communications. Boom, they went all in. So we're very excited about that. Boulder, the city of Boulder has submitted a commitment as well that we're currently considering. Theirs has a little bit of a catch to it that we're working through with our legal team. So more to follow on that. But really hoping to get more commitments, obviously. November 1st is fast around the corner. We'll be getting the money, both us and Owed Chafa, sometime on or after July 1st. So we do not want to be sitting on a pile of money when so many people need housing. So just keep that in mind. And then the local planning capacity development is the one that we're working very closely with our sister agency DLG with. You would probably remember, if you did read Proposition 123, that there is a fast track commitment component included, which is tricky. The good news, though, is it's not required for this first commitment. So if you're interested in being one of the first ones and getting your commitment in by November 1st, you do not have to worry about the fast track process for this 3 year cycle, excuse me. It will be a requirement for every subsequent 3-year commitment. So just keep that in mind. You'll be hearing more definitely from Division of Local Government and us about the opportunity to clarify what this looks like. It's a small couple paragraphs in the law, but very nuanced and potentially tricky. And we want to make sure we're all on the same page, whether it be local building departments that are processing these applications, these permit applications, and of course the developers, the affordable housing developers, who this is ultimately trying to serve, and making sure that those permit requests are moving along, because time is money in the development world, and when you're talking about affordable housing development, it really is. Time is money. These people are operating on a shoestring budget. And of course, if you have any other questions about this this program, Robin's here to answer any questions. They are hiring a technical contractor to provide technical assistance, education outreach on this piece. So more to follow on that. So keep your eye out for communications from Division of Local Government on this opportunity. I want to make sure I'm meeting in 10 minutes. How much time do I have left? I'm good? All right, compliance. You might want to, you're probably thinking, like, what happens if we don't commit? Or what happens if we commit and fail to make our 9% over 3 years? The good news is, first of all, if you don't meet the deadline, November 1st, to file a commitment, you just have a timeout, if you will, of sitting out a year of being ineligible to receive Prop 123 funding, right? So if you, Westminster, want to apply for this money yourself from any of the 6 programs, right, between the different agencies, you would be ineligible to receive any Prop 123 money unless you commit, right? Now, if there is an eligible third party who's interested in applying for this money through us, DLG, Owed Chafa, and you don't have a commitment on file, as discussed, they'd only be able to access the homelessness program dollars. Everything else, the other programs, would require a commitment. So that 1 year sitting out means Prop 123 money basically is not eligible for use in Westminster. But if you decide we're not ready for a 3-year commitment, but we want to do a 2-year commitment, we can get ready by November 1st of next year, that's totally fine. Then you're looking at a 2-year commitment, 6% instead of 9%, or you can do a 1-year commitment, 3%, right, because you're just committing that 1 year. So those are your options before you. It's pretty neat how they wrote it, the proponents of the bill, or the law, I should say. And then of course, compliance at the end of it. So you committed, you're now working on building your affordable housing stock to make sure you meet the 9% increase over 3 years. The way you count that is through permits. You're not talking about complete structures, mercifully, because that would take years, right? You're talking about permits actually issued. And then, of course, at the end of the clock, we're going to be looking and working with you guys to determine, did you make your 9%? And if for every reason you did not make your 9%, the only penalty, if you will, is just like not filing your commitment on time, bless you, sir, is just sitting out a year. You'd be ineligible to file a commitment the following year. You'd have to sit out a year, and then you're filing basically a 2-year commitment after that. So that's what you're looking at for not succeeding, trying your best, but not making that 9%. you'd be sitting out for a year. We have an engagement website. I know some of you have looked at it very closely because you pulled a lot of great information off of it for the lovely write-up you've got in your packet. We do try to keep this updated, so a lot of great information on it. We, of course, are interested in feedback, so we do have an opportunity to provide comments with polls, etc. Please utilize this website if you are interested in learning more about Proposition 123, if you have any comments for our consideration, etc. And like I said, more to follow. As you guys probably know, a House bill was just passed this session to amend some of Proposition 123. So that information will be on our website. I just looked today, it has not yet been signed by the governor. We do anticipate the governor signing it any day now. So that will definitely amend some things. And of course, as soon as those amendments go live, we're gonna provide those updates on that website as well. So that's what I have for you. I hope I made the 10 minutes. I'm here to answer any questions. And of course, Ben is here to get into the baseline data if you have any questions about that. And of course, Robin is here to talk about the local planning capacity development program, if you have any questions about that. Thank you for having us.
I just know from Metro Mayor's Caucus,
Yes.
and they have talked about, because I hear more than two around that table are jumping in. So the big question was, what if everybody jumps in? Is there gonna be enough money?
Well, definitely not. There's not enough money to address the affordable housing crisis in the state. But it's gonna be helpful. And of course, the sooner you get in your commitment, the sooner you can unlock the funds for your jurisdiction, and the sooner other people have access to utilize those funds in your jurisdiction to apply. If you don't play, you're not gonna get anything, right? But we could potentially, depending on how many local jurisdictions commit, number one, and how many nonprofits, housing authorities, local governments themselves, and other eligible recipients apply. We just don't know. We know this for sure. The demand is greater than the supply that we currently have. So those hundreds of millions of dollars I mentioned earlier, right now, we have applications on file for double and triple that amount depending on the programs. So just right now, the $600 million we received in the last couple of years, already spoken for. So this will help. Will it be the answer? Only time will tell.
I just asked that because staff needs to understand, we really don't have till November 1st. We need it in sooner than later so that we do get in line.
No, that's awesome news. Well, we're here to help you. We opened it on May 10th for a reason. We didn't have to. We could wait until July 1st because that's when the money was coming in, but we realized people wanted to, we've heard from several jurisdictions, and also you now, that they wanted to apply sooner rather than later because they also had some projects that they wanted to count towards that 9%. So the sooner you apply, the sooner we can get that accounted.
Councilor Emmons?
I apologize in advance, I should know these answers, but hence the reason why I'm asking, because it's convoluted and messy, to understand. So for the baseline, like, I know that staff had presented, I think it was 270 units as, what we would need, but let's say we applied for 300, like, is there a specific baseline that you look at to say, okay, here's the equation, you really should be at 270, that's what we're gonna be providing funding for, instead of your 300 or 400 that you're applying?
Yeah, the funding won't be associated with your baseline. The baseline is just to say, this is the number we're trying to increase by 3% each year.
Gotcha.
And there's some options in this very prescriptive law that's hard to follow. There's some options for how to go about determining that, right? And we have that baseline assistance tool to help you make that determination, which it sounds like they've done. So that's the number that you're gonna be working off of that's been recommended by your staff as your baseline, right? So now you're committing to grow that by 3% each year. You're gonna be tracking then permits to make sure that you meet that number. But the funding itself will not be tied to like that number, right? It's just the funding will unlock some of the money that will help development projects meet that number, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes, in a way. I'm just trying to figure out like what, if it's not based on number, like, then is it equal amount of funding? Like, how, does Salida get 200,000, we would get 200,000?
Oh, so you're talking about buckets of funding. No, it's not set up that way.
Okay.
It would really be, determined on the projects themselves, right? There'll be an application window for submitting, your application for your funding. And, they would all be considered, there'd be a deadline, all the applications would be received, and then our programs would be evaluating which applications make sense to fund, right? So it'd be probably a competitive process when you really think about it, right? So there isn't, we can't say out of the, $58 million in year one, that each jurisdiction is gonna get a piece of the pie. We just can't make that determination. Because we might see some amazing projects by a few jurisdictions that really get a lot done, that could eat at most of that, especially in year one, since we're only getting half the money.
Okay, that helps.
No, that's a great question.
You mentioned amendments. What type of amendments would we be looking at that would affect? any
One
kind
was,
of
I mentioned
information?
briefly, was tribal governments was included. So there was an oversight, they didn't include tribal governments in the original law. So that was added, which is great news, because we've actually communicated with them and they're interested. They have neither one of them has filed a commitment yet, they're interested. The rural resort communities, which is not gonna be you, right?
Westminster's an oasis.
There's no doubt about that, sir, there's no doubt about that. They were able to change the law to allow them to petition, to have a different AMI applied, given their unique circumstances with especially workforce, housing there. And so that's a new, that was not in the original law, and now requires us to, work with them on any petitions on any of those jurisdictions to get those numbers changed. And really that implicates the OED CHAFA programs, not even the DOH programs, but we have to, weigh in on the petition itself. So that's the biggest one. There was some other cleanup stuff, like OED did not have any administrative percentage reserved for administering their programs, so I think they're getting 2% or something like that in law, and some other changes. But the information's on our website, it will be on our website, excuse me. And of course, if you review and you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. It's a much easier read than the 22 pages of the original law.
And so my understanding is that only governments can apply for this type of funding.
No, not the funding. Only governments can unlock the funding,
Okay.
right? So the funding can be applied by other eligible parties, and it depends on which program, right? Some programs are unique to local government or tribal government, like the local planning capacity development program, right? But other programs, you're talking about nonprofits that can apply, housing authorities that can apply, developers that can apply, just depending on the program itself.
Okay, because I
But
thought.
you guys are the keys to the gate.
Gotcha, okay, because that makes sense, because I was quickly taking notes and I wrote down third party can apply but can only access the homeless portion of that, but I misunderstood that,
Yeah.
so, okay.
And of course, you yourselves can apply too if you're doing development projects and et cetera, homelessness projects, et cetera.
My final question, and this kind of dovetails from the mayor's question, is, sounds like there's a benefit to applying early.
Yes.
So if we apply early, it's first come, first served type of thing?
Once again, there's gonna be separate deadlines for each of the programs. Some will be rolled out, I would suspect, on and after July 1st when the money's available. Some are more complicated programs, and will be rolled out later in the year. And of course, our three programs are very different from the OED CHAFA program, so it's really depending on those programs. But each one will have their deadlines, and it'll be clear to everybody by said date, this is what we expect. Your letters of interest to let us know if you have a viable project that you're considering and what we may anticipate. The actual application itself, meeting whatever requirements that are laid out as part of the application process. And then eventually all those will be reviewed and of course, reviewed against how much money we actually have, right? So not dissimilar to how we currently do things at Division Housing, if you're familiar with any of our funding opportunities.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, great questions.
Okay, I have a bunch.
Ooh,
So,
I see the notepad.
there's like two, but, so it doesn't matter that we're in two separate counties.
No, it gives you more options.
Okay,
That's, I forget,
okay.
Littleton has like 3 counties, which I also didn't know about. And then the counties that, the municipalities on the border of the state, they can access a neighboring jurisdiction from another state.
Yeah, I've looked at the baseline thing and it's like compare us to? I can't remember, it was like Nebraska or something.
Yeah.
On the baseline, I'm just curious, so I didn't realize that to pick the state median income, which would have given us a lower commitment, we'd have to petition. So what is the timeline for petitioning to do a state, using the state median income, and who actually makes that decision?
Anytime, us. Yeah. So you can do that through, the commitment.
But like you just say, okay, like how do you,
It just has to be, you just have to give us a rationale that makes sense, right? And of course, it has to meet the parameters of the law. So as long as we're just checking off, does it meet, what the law says about this, this, and this, and you're good to go.
yeah, because I was looking at that and it seemed a little bit lower than what we were committing to, but,
But of course, you also have to control the optics of it, right? You have to be able to explain to people how you landed at that number, not just us.
yeah, it's just, as you get to be a bigger city and your baseline gets higher, actually achieving the 3% increase on an annual basis is, it's maybe achievable for us, maybe, but I really wonder how the bigger communities are really gonna be able to accomplish this
It's tough.
realistically.
Yeah.
With the limited funding.
The larger your pool of affordable housing, the larger your commitment is to increase
Yeah.
it by 3% each year, absolutely.
Hence why I'd rather go down. But just a couple technical questions. One, for the ownership component,
Mhm.
what does it go up to,
For
AMI
the-
wise?
For the AMI,
Yeah.
it's 100% for sale. And then for a rental, it's a 60% AMI. And then the others, the two important variables in the affordable housing definition in the law is income, the AMIs we're talking about, so 60% for rental, 100% for sale, and then cost. It can't cost the household more than 30% for rental or homeownership.
So you're keeping it 30% even for ownership,
That's the way the law is currently written, yes.
okay. With the, God, I didn't remember this. I'll skip that for a second.
No, and seriously, feel free to reach out any point in time if you think about this, further and have any follow-up questions.
And then for the ownership component, does the AMI level then revert? So, we have our commitment and our baseline and whatever we're using for that, but let's say this price, so we're in two counties. So a project in Jefferson County versus Adams County, do we have to use that county's AMI level?
No, so great question. So you're even though you're situated in two counties, you're committing on behalf of the city of Westminster. You're not weighing in on the counties themselves. They'll be weighing in on unincorporated parts of their counties, right? So if they want to unlock dollars for the unincorporated parts of the two counties that you sit in, they're gonna have to file their own commitments, right?
Right, I get that. I'm just saying what AMI, so you're talking about for ownership, that's 100% of the AMI. What AMI are we using?
Well, for your affordable housing stock, right, any for sale units, you're counting 100% or less, right? And you can choose your own AMI to do that, or you can choose a neighboring jurisdiction, which would be a neighboring county, based on your being in two counties, that opens up more for you, or you can use the state median income. It's just for establishing your baseline, and then ultimately counting through permits any new affordable housing. If they meet that definition, if they are at 100% AMI for sale or 60% rental, they can count, right? So that's what that's for. And it gets more tricky because the programs that you're applying for or someone else is applying for will have different AMI levels as well. And that's where it gets really tricky.
And the AMI level does that have to correlate with our commitment and how we calculated the commitment?
Yes, yes, because the numbers will have to meet that. So whatever AMI you selected, that's what you're locked in for the 3 years, right? And then because that baseline is based on that, and whatever you're building, right, to show compliance, is gonna be building on that number. And they're all gonna be the same, 60%, 100% on whatever AMI you actually use for your commitment, whether it be your own AMI or whether you petition for something else.
Difficult to track over time if our base fluctuates or if our methodology for calculating the base changes.
It won't change. You'd be locked in for the first 3 years.
Right.
And then you
but
can, then you
after that-
reset, the following 3 years. And then you can make a determination, well, we learned a lot from those first 3 years, right? Maybe we're gonna do something different to set our baseline the next 3 years.
So we might have projects with different AMI levels that we have to track.
You would be just tracking anything below 100% and 60%, because that's what counts. So if you build other housing that's, above that, awesome, but they're not gonna count towards your commitment.
Right. But okay, I'll not ask. What's the length of the deed restriction, or does that matter?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, we're talking about all affordable housing that meets the 60% or the 100%.
Is there a minimum? You could have 1 year deed restriction on an AMI?
You could have
On a
market
ownership.
rate that counts. Naturally occurring affordable housing that counts. And have 0 deed restriction, excuse me.
And this is just for the ownership one?
Both. Rental too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, got that one, sorry.
All right. The geniuses are actually behind me. He's pulling all the strings.
And just to clarify, some of the funds that anyone might want to tap are from the CHAFA program, right? And they may have specific requirements on their programs, like they have a land banking program. So we're not really getting into those details, but each program may have its own requirements, such as years of a deed restriction or a land use restriction.
Or a specific AMI to use.
Right.
Yeah, so the programs are, just keep that in mind, they're gonna be different from the baseline commitment process.
Okay.
And some of those units will count towards the baseline commitment process and some won't. But it will still increase affordable housing, or housing in all jurisdictions that commit.
Okay, one last question, and thank you for letting me pepper you. Is it the ownership component, is that, if we had some type of program to convert existing homes into deed restricted affordable, not that we have one at the moment, but is that something that could qualify?
Absolutely.
Like a one unit?
Absolutely, but it doesn't have to be deed restricted either, just keep that in mind. But at the time you got it done, you converted it to affordable housing, meaning it met the 100% threshold, boom, it counts. And that might change by the next commitment if it was it wasn't deed restricted. That's what's interesting about the law. Yeah.
So weird to me, okay, all right, okay. Thank
But if you wanna make them all deed restricted, then that would really make things simpler for you down the road.
Well, it
But
would
that's up
kind
to you to
of
decide.
make some sense for, public funding to have a deed restriction.
But as mentioned, though, some of the programs themselves may have those type of strings. Those details have not been fleshed out yet. They're still working on the program details.
Okay,
Can I speak to that for a minute? So if we were to support the program, and St. Charles Town Company was coming in for low-income housing tax credits for their proposed project up at Uplands, their tax credits are going to deed restrict that property.
for a 30-year minimum.
Right. So they're gonna, it's another vehicle is going to add that restriction into the development.
But potentially not the ownership component, but DOH is the program, the affordable ownership program.
It could be. I don't know. We haven't built it out yet. It may have some restrictions like that. I just don't know.
And you'll have it built out by July 1.
That's right. Actually, I don't know. It'll be sometime around July. Just don't know which date.
Okay, thank you.
But you also reminded me of something, and actually related to the question earlier about, there's gonna be enough money available for all this. The reality is, just like a lot of other affordable housing opportunities, you're probably talking about stacking, right? To get projects done. You're gonna take advantage of tax credits if you can. You're gonna take advantage of our other programs at Division Housing. You're gonna take advantage of other resources that are out there as well, and hopefully build them all to get your projects done and not just rely on one revenue source.
Okay, one last question, sorry.
Uh-oh, you promised.
The housing, the planning assistance, I know we're about to do an update to our housing analysis, so I'm just curious, if we've started it, or how, if it's currently going, is that something we can get potential funding?
Potentially, so that's the type of program that could be funded through a number of DLG programs, such as the Energy Impact Grant Funds. But our program will allow a variety of planning work that supports the goals of Prop 123. So especially expedited development review to get the fast track by 2026. A grant could help you do that, whether it's implementing software, you need extra staff capacity, you need to hire consultants to help you refine your process. But again, our program is also taking input right now on what do communities need, and then we're developing the program guidelines to hopefully meet different types of communities' different needs.
Thank you.
And I would just add a little point of clarification on the housing needs assessment. We're actually have a RFP open, soliciting bids, and so the timing probably won't work because we have some tight lines to meet the city's strategic KPIs as well. So we might have missed the opportunity for that particular topic, but maybe for future.
Councilor Zadi?
Okay, so I think I did a great job explaining this. I know it's complicated. So the commitment process is different than the individual programs requirements. So it really simply just unlocks the money for us, this
Correct.
commitment. So when you say it counts, it's just us, it's just for us to remain unlocked on that money. But we still need to meet the requirements of whatever program.
If you're
falls under
applying
that.
for funds yourself, absolutely. Anybody applying for funds for any of the programs have to meet whatever those requirements are. And they have different AMIs as specified in the law. And then, of course, they're gonna have a different process as built up by the agencies and the experts in figuring out how to best utilize that money, right? And that can be you applying for that, or it can be these other eligible parties, as I mentioned earlier, housing authorities, nonprofits, developers, et cetera.
But they can't apply for that until we unlock the money from the
Correct,
commitment.
except
Okay.
for the folks that can apply for homelessness dollars,
Except for
as
that.
long as it's not contributing towards creation of additional affordable housing.
Okay, and two more questions. On success metrics, how are you planning on measuring the success of this initiative, this proposition in general, right? Is it just if all the money is used up by municipalities? Or do you have metrics to say, okay, this was successful, or this wasn't?
Yeah, great question. We can probably make it as sophisticated as we want, but at a base level is, did you meet the 9%, right? So this is the baseline that you said was your baseline, and it's supported, and you've made you provide the rationale that it's justified. Have you increased that by 3% each year for 9% increase? So basically just math, right? 9%. Have you increased it by 9% at the end of that 3-year commitment? And that, if you have, boom, you're good to go. If you have other things that you would like to track to show what amazing work you've done in Westminster, by all means do it, but that's what we're looking for. It's just, did you grow it by 9% over 3 years, or 6% if you have a 2-year commitment, or 3% if you have a 1-year commitment?
And is there a public feedback mechanism that you guys are centrally going to implement, or is really up to each municipality to figure out on their own? So how implementation is going, getting input from the public on that?
Oh, yeah, we'll be constantly communicating with you folks, whether it be us directly or Division of Local Government or OED at CHAFA, on how things are working. Especially, you know, we're gonna try to guess what compliance looks like. I mean, the 9%, it's just easy, right? But, you know, we're talking about counting permits, right? You know, how's that process going? We're gonna definitely need your feedback. Is it simple? Did you guys learn that this is actually more complicated than anyone thought, including the people who wrote the law? We'll revisit these things every 3 years, but not just every 3 years, every year, right? So yeah, to answer your question is yes, constant feedback loop. Especially you guys will be learning just like us on how this is working, and even more so because you're the ones filing commitment and hearing from developers and, you know, who are applying for your permits to get these projects done, in addition to them applying to us for the funding.
Thanks.
Yeah, great questions.
Councilor Baker?
Yeah, really, Councilor Okilike-Azadi asked, I think, a really excellent question. And if I understand your answer, is that none of this money will come to the city unless we build houses.
Unless you file a commitment
Right.
to build affordable housing.
Right, but
correct.
we would have to build houses.
Somebody would,
Otherwise,
yeah. Somebody would, yes.
otherwise, the money would go to builders who want to build these type of houses in our city.
No, nobody could receive that money if you don't file a commitment, whether it be yourself or a builder.
Yeah, but I mean, what we do is we file the commitment,
Correct.
but we don't necessarily build anything. The city doesn't build anything.
Correct.
It'd just be other third parties to build things in our city,
Correct.
and they would get some kind of subsidies from the state.
They would have access to apply for these funds through these programs.
Right, and these funds are subsidies, right?
They are subsidized by the state through Tabor refunds, if that's your question.
It's state money
Correct.
being given to the developers, which then offset the total funds they need to build these projects,
Correct.
which make the marketing price less.
It helps them get the project done, correct, if that's what you're saying.
Okay. What happens if we fail to meet our really commitment?
As I mentioned earlier, if you do not meet the commitment, you would not be able to have any of that money available the next calendar year. So if you did not get 9% done by December 31st of 2026, you'd be sitting out the 2027 year and not be eligible for anyone to receive that funding for your jurisdiction.
Okay.
But you would not have to pay back any of the money from the 3 years that you were committed.
Right. And if we didn't get any willing participants in the city to build in those 3 years, then we'd fail to meet our really commitment, but then we'd just be locked out for a year and could apply again later.
Correct, sir.
Okay. I don't understand, because I work better with examples. So, and we haven't had the baseline, but working backwards, out of the 53,000 residential units we have in Westminster, 3,000 of them are affordable?
Yes, and I'm gonna ask, maybe, Ben to help us with that. So we worked with, Connor and Ben to really establish our baseline based on, our AMI, our average medium income. So it's a percentage and a formula basis. And we do feel that, our 3%, 9% over 3 years, we have those, we have 2 applications in the pipeline right now. And we feel fairly confident that the risk would be low and we would be able to meet that commitment easily.
Okay, and really what our the commitment does is it allows these people that we've identified to apply for the state subsidies.
Correct, sir.
Okay. So again, working backwards from the number, that means 94% of the residences in the city of Westminster are really unaffordable by the AMI.
I don't know if I could do that
well,
math right here on the
Well,
table.
no, if there are 3,000 units,
Yeah,
and we have 53,000 total, 3,000 is roughly 6% of 53,000. So that means 6% of our housing units are affordable, and 94% are more than, are unaffordable, or whatever
Market.
language.
market rate, probably. Based on that math, yes.
Okay. And isn't the affordability a function of the price in the marketplace? Like, if you go back in time 40 years, didn't we have like 30%, 50% of the houses in
So the way
Westminster affordable?
I think the way our state agencies and our federal agencies define affordability is that you are paying 30% of your gross income or less towards housing. So if I'm making $100 a year, I should not pay more than $30
Right.
towards my housing.
Right.
So I think that correlation is, there's a lot of factors that go into determining what's affordable and what's not affordable. A person's income, the market as it fluctuates. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and
Okay.
if you go back 40 years ago, when it took 2.5 times an annual income to afford a property, as versus today with 5 times your annual income, that means there have to be far fewer affordable properties.
Correct.
Okay, so that gets to my point, isn't affordability a function of the market?
Yeah?
And how does it work with rentals? Because one would assume that most of our affordable properties are rentals. And isn't that a function of what the landlord is charging?
Let me see how the best way to answer this, and you guys can, so there's a lot of it depends would be my first answer, sir. So there's a lot of different subsidies that help make up that difference between that 30% affordability and a person's AMI. So if someone is not on a Section 8 voucher or on some other sort of program, if you will, then they would be, then all of their income would be going towards their housing, which means they're not able to afford food, car, healthcare, et cetera. So it really, I can't just give you a straight answer on that one because there's too many variables. It really is a basis of, depending on where they are living and what, if they are on a program, and if so, what part of that gap would that program fill?
Okay, well,
I'm a little confused on the question. I'm a little confused on the question. Could you restate it, please? Your question?
in the city of Westminster, it would be my guess that the vast majority of our affordable residential properties are rentals.
I mean, I don't know your data off the top of my head, but. I mean,
Well,
it's dependent on
I
the-
think just about the minimum house price in the city of Westminster is $400,000. And isn't, well, that's the very minimum,
Yeah.
Well,
end.
okay?
I believe it's closer to 600, sir.
Okay, and what's our AMI?
Our it's in this, it's 70, our average, it's probably close to do you know off the top of your
Just
head?
under 100,000.
It's just under 100.
100,000. Well, a $400,000 house would be 4 times their annual income, and a $600,000 house would be 6 times your annual income. And I think both of those are way over the 30%, aren't they?
Correct. Which speaks to the need for
So,
programs to help.
so, I mean, that means to me that most ownership property in this city is beyond this definition, right? None of it's affordable.
So basically,
Correct.
is there a number mostly, propped up by rental versus
Yeah,
homeownership?
I think-
It was more,
Yeah.
more home ownership because there's not that many rentals here.
Oh,
I think the short answer is yes, but again, there is a little bit of a nuance there based on people's income and their housing. So we're speaking on averages. If you speak about averages, then yes.
Okay. But if we fail to meet the means, the only penalty is we're out of the program for a year.
Correct.
Thank you.
Pro Tem?
First point I would just want to make real quick is I think that's why there's so many people, including myself, that I could not buy my home today. Nowhere close to it would I be able to afford my home today at today's market rate. And I hear that consistently from residents. So most of the people I know that have moved within the city, with very few exceptions, have moved to other places because they couldn't afford to move somewhere else in the city. I think that's important for us to remember. Thank you for the presentation. I know I certainly am no expert on this. I am interested in getting more of the CHAFA information. I know CHAFA has great programs, and I would like to be better educated on them. Back to myself, if it wasn't for a CHAFA program, I wouldn't have been able to get into my home because they did the CHAFA loan is how I got into my home at the end of the last housing recession. So I would like to be better educated on those. One thing I did want to ask about, so it's very clear, especially as you went through it with the, us needing to meet the 9%. Is there any, and I guess you don't know because this is new, so you're trying to figure out how this is going to work, but so we unlock the commitments, then people can apply for it. We have some projects that we know that would probably already apply for it. That doesn't mean other ones won't, decide to try to utilize those funds. But you said that, you know, once they try to go after these projects, that doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna get them, they're just available for them to apply. And it
Right.
sounds like it's gonna be very competitive. And so I guess one of the things that, is a concern, and, you know, maybe it's, you end up failing because of this, but, you know, if, say we have, just for easy math, say we have 5 projects that go in and 3 of them get approved and 2 of them don't, and we just miss our 9%, but it's not from lack of trying to utilize the funds, we still would, you know, missing the 9% is missing the 9%, correct? So does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does.
Because we could be potentially, I mean, that sounds like that's probably a real scenario,
Oh,
since
absolutely.
the funds
But
are
I would
limited.
still view that as a win. If those projects were built using Prop 123 money, that's what it was designed for. It'd be unfortunate we couldn't make the 9% to make the money continuously available for the following calendar year, but you still built units that didn't exist before using those funds, and I think that's a win.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I just wanna make sure I understand how it works. Because then one of the other things that I would say right up front is gonna be useful, as you guys start rolling this out over the next 3 years, is for there to be good feedback about why projects didn't make it. Maybe there's just a project that's much better, but still being able to go back to the developer community or even city or whoever is getting the funds to say, hey, this one made it because they, you know, did A, B, and C. I think it's gonna be really useful, at least for us, to be able to, you know, tell the development community who we're trying to deliver affordable units in our city to, hey, here's how you could do better next time. Especially understanding we have 3 years to try to meet that 9%.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is while you were just talking, you made me think of something. Even though the fast track is not required the first 3 years, you're probably gonna want your building department to get those permits out quickly within those 3 years so they count towards your 9%. So just something to think about. You're gonna have some naturally occurring fast track pushing going on internally within the local government, I would think.
And I just wanted to offer that through the local planning capacity grant program, one of the projects that a community might pursue is what other strategies could we put in place from a planning, zoning perspective that would incentivize developers to get more affordable, attainable housing that meets these AMIs in these years, right? How can we fast track these projects? How can we get more of them and create an incentive structure to get more of them?
Great. And I guess just my opinion as far as what this is, I mean, the voters in my mind in the state spoke and said they want us to do something. So we're kind of past that. Is this the right thing for a state government or municipal government to do? So I think for us, I'm glad to hear that staff is working hard to figure out how we move forward with it. Sounding like it's probably tight for us to do some of the things we were gonna do anyway and be able to get on board with this. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to come and educate us.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity for dialogue.
Seymour? Anything? It looks like your brain's thinking.
I'm very glad to hear that the fast track process was eliminated for the first 3 years, because the presentation that we got at the partnership meeting in Adams County 3 months ago, you know, that was just a bone of contention with most of the local governments. And quite frankly, if that was still in place, I would be in no way inclined to authorize our commitment, because that's just another way that the state, this is not on division of housing, this is just, you know, on our legislature to say, at every turn, we are going to usurp your constitutional right as a home rule city to make your own decisions. You know, we saw SB 213 along that track as well. And so, you know, the housing crisis is local government's problem. No, it's from the collapse of 2008, and every municipality in the entire country is trying to catch up from that. So, you know, but in the state of Colorado, it's become municipal's problem. Well, since that's been removed, I would feel inclined to give this a try, make the commitment, see what we have in the pipeline, and then see whether there's some reasonable adjustments from that time as far as what they really want to call as fast tracking. And so, you know, I'm inclined to move forward on this at this point, but and see what comes of it, since we do have items in the pipeline. But also, more importantly on that, is that in the agenda memo, there was a note that 270 fits into our 2040 comp plan. So that would be one thing that would also be another line that I would draw. So willing to look at that from that standpoint.
Okay, so in my notes, I have the very first thing that we received the information, so I think we can check that off, correct? Okay. Second thing was review baseline data and should we proceed with Prop 123. Rich has already given us his opinion, so I'm gonna go around and see if we have any consensus.
So,
Do we move forward?
yes.
am a yes, but I second what Councilor Seymour said. Obviously, we don't want to go past our 2040 comp plan. We worked very hard on getting that where it needs to be, so, but otherwise, I think it's a no-brainer to me. I don't know why we wouldn't do it.
Counselor Baker?
When are we gonna get the baseline data?
Our baseline is 270. It was in the agenda memo. So 270 over 3 years.
So that's all the baseline we're getting?
That's what we need to provide.
That's our minimum, yes, sir,
That's the 3% of the baseline. Right.
over 3 years.
Yeah, I understand that. That's how I calculated back that we have 3,000 affordable units. Aren't we gonna have a presentation? We have 3,000 affordable units, and this is the dollar rental of the units, and these are the types of units?
No, I don't think that had been considered because, again, that analysis is, so that's where we are right now. So we want to increase that. As Mo stated, we want 100% AMI for ownership projects and 60%. So that's going to be tracked by the building permits issued. And beyond that, I don't think it needs to, it's not more complicated than that.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how we got there.
Through DOH's online analysis, we worked with DOLA's staff to come up with this baseline analysis.
Okay, I'm all for, okay, like applying and unlocking the funds.
I think Counselor Seymour said it perfect, and I'm a yes.
Counselor Seymour, anything else? Counselor Zadi?
Yes, and I just want to say, for anyone listening, that housing affordability is mostly market-driven, but it's also government policy. It's a large part of it, right? Zoning, building regulations, financial regulations, direct assistance, all of those things impact the affordability of housing. So government policy is a critical element, but yes, to your question. Thank you.
And for me, I'm a yes, but when we look at ownership, I hope we look at ownership because I think we're behind in that for affordability. The condos that this person is starting to build, if that's a success, I hope he's willing to do more. So, what else do you need from us? You have 7 people.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Yep.
so much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for all your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mo.
Looking forward to seeing your commitment. Thanks.
Great job.
Oh,
Slide.
No, we need
Thanks,
a,
guys.
Stephanie, thank you.
7.5 minutes. Go.
6.
Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, our next presentation is an update on the Big Dry Creek drainage project. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hawthorne. So,
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Manager Freitag. Great presentation from our partners over at DOLA, huh? The affordable housing. Having just rented the other half of my duplex, I know there's overwhelming demand for people looking for housing in our community. But I am Andrew Hawthorne. I'm the Stormwater Utility Administrator for the city. I've been with the city for over 15 years now and have performed dozens of capital projects in my time, most notably the national and multiple award-winning Little Dry Creek project. You now know it as Westminster Station Park. And I am here to give you a presentation on our status of our collaboration on the Big Dry Creek at City Park projects. So we have a few different projects going on. All are in cooperation with Mile High Flood District. And we set out a few years ago to collaborate on these with our parks people, our public works people, open space, and the district, the Mile High Flood District, of course. We have a project over by Westcliff between Wadsworth Boulevard and Westcliff Parkway. That's fully a district project. That is a drainage restoration project. They are wrapping that up. They're doing the plantings out there now. We have our big city project through City Park. We're wrapping up 90% design, and we're hoping to go to construction in fall. We have another project that is in pre-design, also through the district. That one will be a fully district-funded maintenance project. That one is between Sheridan and 112th. Our project partners on this are Public Works with the Big Dry Creek Sewer Interceptor Project, as well as the additional sewer line projects that they have going on. So we worked with Parks and Public Works a few years ago to try to set up a systematic approach to our multiple projects through this area, so that we can avoid a lot of construction fatigue and be hot on the heels one project to the next, so that when they wrap up, we can come in and we can complete ours. There's also a lot of cooperation between the groups, because Public Works doesn't need to fully restore their project site with their interceptor sewer project. They just need to stabilize it for permit compliance. And then we can come back through with our City Park project and do our plantings with a couple hundred trees, several thousand shrubs, tens of thousands of grasses, and carry it through establishment. We have on all of these projects, we have a few different reasons and needs. We have regulatory compliance, we have water rights issues, environmental stewardship, and of course public safety. Part of our issues at City Park is we had a combination of reclaimed irrigation water and stormwater in the City Park pond. That is a big no-no. So that has been resolved, and the two are not being mixed, but we are separating those as part of this project. We have a retention pond behind the Weston that back in the day, a retention pond is a normal course of business, very well accepted, but nowadays the water rights regulations do not allow us to hold back water, so we have to eliminate that.
What are the ducks gonna do? And the little black guys that go under the water and aren't like ducks, they have to dry themselves off once in a while.
They have to move with the flow now.
Oh,
Okay,
and all of the tadpoles.
We will be building them a new home. We removed some channel length back in the day, many decades ago. The Army Corps of Engineers does not like that, so we are putting it back. We lost habitat because of just the degradation of the channel over time. We have embankment stabilization. If you go out there now, you can see there's 20, 30-foot vertical drops. It kind of creates a bit of a dangerous situation. And we have water quality detention, so we're adding water quality detention through the area to pick up water quality where it did not exist before. The
picture that you see here is the concrete channel behind Sheridan Reed subdivision. It empties out into that concrete pit, which we will be getting rid of. There's a nice picture of 20, 30-foot vertical embankments. Our partners, community development, stormwater, of course, my staff, very essential. Public Works and Utilities, Rudy Archuleta, just incredibly helpful. Working with him, great partner to have on this. Parks, Recs, and Libraries, the team over there under Lance, and yeah, John Van, Andy Murtha, Joe Reale, just great people to work with. We've been collaborating on all of this work out there for several years now. Our communications division, essential. You know, a big shout out to Sarah Steele and her team for setting us up on our website and all of our social media, setting up our public outreach, and all of the communications materials. Exciting news, pending partners, we are applying through the Mile High Flood District, we are applying for a grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And most recently, we just went to the Metro Basin Roundtable and received unanimous support for a letter of support for our project, which is a big kudos for us. And you know, fingers crossed, we will make the cut and receive that grant. Looking ahead, we got a public meeting at City Park in the Pavilion on July 19th, 6 to 8 p.m. Please come out. There's going to be you know, the theme is food truck. I'm pushing for tacos, but we'll see how it goes. The Big Dry Creek Sewer Interceptor project is wrapping up. It should be complete within the next couple of months. Our drainage project over at Wadsworth Boulevard and Westcliff Parkway is wrapping up. They're doing the plantings now. Our drainage project through City Park, we're planning construction in fall. And with any luck, we'll have it wrapped up for the CML conference at the Westin in June of '26. Our project over at between Sheridan and 112th is in pre-design, and no construction date is set for that one. Yeah. So here's a glimpse as to what we're planning out there. This is on our project webpage, and I will come back to this in just a second. That did not translate very well in the sizing, so that is cityofwestminster.us/streambank restoration. That's our website, that's all the project information. Where the map that you just saw is housed, please feel free to frequent that for any information you might have. And that's me, Andrew Hawthorne, Stormwater Utility Administrator, my contact info, just to put it on public record. And there it is. Open to questions.
Councilor Seymour?
Thank you. Just a comment that if anyone has a hard time envisioning what this is going to look like, they should go to Old Wadsworth and look at that section there. It's beautiful, and it still doesn't have all the vegetation there, but and if you want to see those embankments just behind the Sheridan to 112th, I mean, there are 30+ drop-offs on there. So if that ends up looking even halfway like that section in the Westcliff section, it's going to be more usable. The habitat's going to be incredible. Just by increasing the flow on that, it's going to have a great effect on that water. But yeah, this is I'm sure there's going to be a little construction fatigue anyway for the neighbors there. It's just that they've got something to look forward to if it turns out anywhere near like the Westcliff project. So it's going to be just that path along there, the whole Big Dry Creek is going to look amazing. So good work.
I almost crashed the car thinking, what's happened? I was alone and couldn't say to somebody else, tell me what's going on over there. I'm going. Councilor Novella?
I'm just curious, with the restoration and plantings that you'll be doing, are we working at all with the Butterfly Pavilion or other conservation group to?
Through no specifically to the Butterfly Pavilion. Our parks and open space and foresters have been very deeply involved with this. Our landscape architect is very, very much in tune with the ecological restoration piece of this. So, no, we have not reached out with the Butterfly Pavilion specifically on this, but that is a good suggestion.
And how, I'm assuming there's probably some critters out there that are already, you know, making this their home, this area their home.
Yep.
Just, I'm sure we're gonna pretty much disturb that whole.
Yes, yes, it does have to get worse before it gets better. Part of the reason why we selected the contractor that we did, Naranjo Construction, is because they have a very well-developed wildlife relocation program. So we already know that we have some issues with beaver dams, and there's a very famous turtle apparently that lives out there. I think he might have his own Facebook page. But
He's
yes,
mean though.
Yes, he is.
we're very aware of that, and we're very mindful of handling that appropriately.
That is great to hear. Thank you.
Counselor Baker?
If you could translate this into more understandable language, are you really straightening out the big dry creek and cutting the drop-offs into slopes?
We are not straightening the creek, we are actually adding sinuosity, so we're adding more curves and more bends. The embankments from the vertical incisement, like that in the picture, we will be laying those back to more
So
appropriate
be
4 to
cutting them
1
into slopes.
Yep,
Okay, thank you. And this is paid for by the wastewater district mostly?
not the wastewater, stormwater,
Stormwater,
and the Mile High Flood District.
right. And those are both, the mill levies on our property taxes.
Through the district, correct.
Yeah. How much of really city money is involved?
It's about a 60-40 split, with 60% coming from the city.
Okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
And then where in the process, because we have to take this all the way to I-25?
Eventually, one day, yes. During the 2018 drainage study, we did identify numerous locations along Big Dry Creek that need improvements. This is on the top of that list. We will have other restoration projects in cooperation with the district in future years, but this is at the top of our list.
Okay, and like when we had that big flood back in, 2013, September?
Yep.
Is your reforming of the Big Dry and adding sinews going to change where that floodplain lies? Or is it going to is it gonna fill up the whole valley, or what?
The intent is to allow the floodplain to spread out more naturally. So with this
And that's
chute
basically
of water.
sloping those banks,
I'm sorry,
sloping the blanks
yep,
would add more volume.
correct. And it allows it to spread out like it normally should in a normal habitat.
Gotcha. So, we don't think that even if we had a 1,000-year flood, we'd be in a jam? Because, we were spared. The city was spared in that 2013 flood. There were other places that were just devastated, and even people washed away in cars.
Yep.
But even a 1,000-year flood, we'd be okay?
500.
Get your crystal ball out.
So the 1,000-year flood is not typically planned for. It's impossible to fund a project of that enormity.
Okay, so, this would handle the 100-year flood then?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? It's just been great watching. I know the work that's been done, but along some of the areas, people have contacted me to just say how mindful you are, how thoughtful you are, and thank you for doing everything that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Anything else you need from us?
That's all we got, Mayor.
Let's go home.